am in so much debt. Oh. Welcome to Occasionally a Show, where we occasionally remember to put on one of these things. Okay, so since last we shot, like, the world has flipped on its head like 7 different times, and on behalf of my pitiful little show, I'm gonna go ahead and ask all of the current events to just stop for a minute, okay? Pause on the world-changing events, okay, just until we catch up. No? Okay, fair enough. And that's probably for the best, considering that most of the change occurring has been for the better. Okay? Today, the Stoneman Douglas High School students have returned to their school, and it has been these children who have been the reason for all of this change. They've spoken up louder than any of us could have imagined, and they're avoiding all of the typical distracting talking points so often brought up by conservatives after a shooting. And they're going straight for the NRA's throat by targeting its money. Money in Washington could probably account for like 99% of the world's problems, but the NRA's funding has always been especially a big blight on our country due to, like, you know, the murder happening on a constant basis. One of the most shameful moments in this nation was after Sandy Hook. After President Obama tried to pass a ban on certain military-grade assault weapons and limit magazine capacity because, I mean, it was these things that led to the death of 20 children and 6 adults in Newton, Connecticut, as, like, you know, you'll hopefully remember. The proposal was overwhelmingly supported by most of the country, but defeated in the Senate as conservative members blocked the proposal after intense pressure from the NRA, which means those 20 children died for nothing. But right now, that doesn't seem to be the case. Last Thursday, on the 22nd, CNN hosted a town hall debate where the survivors would get to look their governor, Rick Scott, who has been rolling back gun legislation for years, making Florida one of the easiest places to purchase a firearm, and demand him to make a change. Oh, hang on. Hello? Wait, what's that? Rick Scott didn't show up to address the survivors of a school shooting that happened in his state? Why wouldn't he do that? What's that? It's because he's a coward and complicit in the deaths of their classmates by refusing to discuss the multiple mass shootings that have occurred in his state and done things like reinforce the stand your ground law, oppose universal background checks, and then cut the cost of the concealed carry permit 3 times during his administration. I mean, okay, fair enough. That all sounds pretty bad, but, like, complicit in the death of 17 high school students sounds a little harsh and pretty controversial. Uh-huh. Yeah, wait, what's that? He also signed a bill that allowed children to play with simulated weapons in school while decreasing funds for those public schools like the one where the shooting occurred? Okay, yeah, no, it does sound like this kind of was his fault. Okay, well, at least did the president show up? I mean, they sent him an invitation, and I mean, Obama met with the families of Newton in private for hours. So, like, the least Trump could do is show up for a televised town hall and try to answer some questions. What, really? He spent most of the week of the shooting at Mar-a-Lago attacking the FBI through Twitter? Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. Well, I mean, who did show up? Marco Rubio? Fine. And to Rubio's very small credit, he did show up when most Republicans in Congress have been, at best, unwilling to even acknowledge the Stoneman students.
For Senator Rubio.
I would just like to thank you again for coming out and listening to us, because that's a lot more than what can be said for our so-called president and governor.
And at worst, outright attacking their character, with some far-right conspiracy theorists even claiming the students are actors, and the entire event is just a hoax, because, you know, that's just like what they do.
Yeah, it kind of becomes a red herring, you know, to say the whole thing was staged, because they have staged events before.
For the most part, Rubio stood there like he was passing a kidney stone, gave non-answers, and refused to say yes when asked directly if he would refuse the NRA's money.
Rubio, can you tell me right now that you will not accept a single donation from the NRA in the future? Guys, be quiet, be quiet. You know,
And I,
we're gonna be
and,
here
I,
all night.
and I just think that ultimately that is not our goal here. Our goal here is to move forward.
Wait, so hold on.
And
so right
prevent
now,
these
in the
from ever happening again.
in the name of 17 people, you cannot ask the NRA to keep their money out of your campaign?
You know, classic Rubio. But he did have the wherewithal to actually call out Trump's idiotic plan of arming teachers because, you know, duh.
Other people that are around the world is the answer to the gun problem is to arm teachers. And when I had those hundreds of terrified children that were running at me, my question to that is, am I supposed to get extra training now to serve and protect?
And I would admit to you right now, I answer that as much as a father as I do as a senator. The notion that my kids are going to school with teachers that are armed with a weapon is not something that, quite frankly, I'm comfortable with. Beyond it, I think it has practical problems. And I'll share what they are. And this is really about the safety of the teacher as much as anything else. Imagine in the middle of this crisis, and the SWAT team comes into the building, and there's an adult with a weapon in their hands, and the SWAT team doesn't know who is who, and we have an additional tragedy that was unnecessary. And so I understand how some people are saying that.
And he did show himself maybe, possibly, just maybe, to changing his stance on gun control in the wake of this unimaginable tragedy. And really, this seems to be the big takeaway from all of this, is that unlike in 2013, where the Senate did nothing to protect people after 20 children were shot dead in their elementary school, change now seems possible. Shame is actually working. Companies are cutting their ties left and right with the NRA, save for Google and Amazon. I don't know what's going on with them. But anyways, Trump has now proposed a ban on bump stocks, even though they're already supposed to be illegal. Whatever. And major NRA puppet and coward, Governor Rick Scott, is also separating himself from Trump's idiotic armed teachers idea because, again, duh, but is also proposing a requirement that a person would need to be over 21 in order to buy a shotgun or rifle. This is in contrary to much of his policy up until this point, and supposedly is earning him the ire of the NRA. But this requirement may have stopped 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz from attaining the weapon she used to murder his former classmates. Maybe. This change of conservative minds is due in large part to the Parkland survivors who have risen up to meet this tremendous occasion and have no hesitation about making their loss felt and their opinions heard at the town hall.
Drills, code reds, active shooters, they've been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. When I was in 5th grade, I had to hide in a closet, in a bathroom for 3 hours and just waiting with my teacher and nearly 20 other kids to see that just because a shooter has come to our town, not even in the school itself, now 7 years later, I'm in a closet with 19 other kids waiting, fearing for my own life. Now I'd like to ask you that after me and several others have been going out of their way, going to the state capitol, speaking out, we'd like to know, why do we have to be the ones to do this? Why do we have to speak out to the Capitol? Why do we have to march on Washington just to save innocent lives?
The two figures that have particularly risen up to the forefront as leaders of the Never Again movement are Cameron Kasky, who directly confronted Rubio about his NRA funding, and Amelia Gonzalez, who was able to stare down into the soulless pits of NRA spokeswoman Dana Loesch. Both kids are more than formidable to these largely influential figures and are now denting the side of the NRA's previously impenetrable walls. This, of course, is an ongoing story, but I'm cautiously optimistic. For once, positive change may come out of a life-ending tragedy. Also, shut up, Trump, you fat hypocrite. You refuse to walk upstairs or privately meet with the school shooting survivors. There's no way you're running to save anyone. Just go back to your office and pass some gun legislation. From this desk, this has been Occasionally a Show. And next week, we hope to bring you more occasional good news out of things that are currently happening. Good night. Yeah, I guess that was good. I was still